The warning, he didn't speak. He just slid the crumpled napkin across the tray and stared. Tyrone froze. The tray in his hand trembled slightly, steam curling off the styrofoam plate of fries and chicken tenders. The man sitting on the cracked bench hadn't said a word, just reached out with a grimy hand and handed him something, torn, greasy, scribbled on in faint, shaky writing. Tyrone unfolded it, trying not to wrinkle his nose at the stench. Then he read the words, and his stomach dropped. "He's not who you think I am. You're in danger. Watch the man in the blue van." He blinked. Once. Twice. What the... He looked up. The man was gone. No sound, no footsteps, just gone, like he had vanished into thin air. 1 second there, the next. Empty bench, the plastic tray still sitting untouched where Tyrone had left it. He spun around in a slow circle, scanning the street. There it was, across the road, half hidden in the shadow of a flickering streetlight. Blue van, its engine was off, windows tinted, no movement. But Tyrone's gut twisted. Something about it felt wrong, predatory. He backed away, slowly at first, then faster. His eyes never left the van. He ducked into the 24-hour corner market, pretending to browse the gum rack, heart pounding against his ribs. From inside, he could still see the van through the glass, still motionless. But it was there, watching, or rather someone inside it was. It had all started a few weeks earlier. Tyrone, 17, had taken a part-time job at Carl's Diner down on 4th Street. The money wasn't great, but his mom needed help with bills. Rent was late again. Marcus, his older brother, was more interested in impressing girls and throwing shade than actually being useful. Tyrone was the reliable one, the quiet one, the one who didn't complain. That's when he first noticed the homeless man, curled, up behind the alley near the public library, just lying there, shivering, coat pulled over his face. Nobody cared. People stepped around him like he was trash. Some even laughed, but Tyrone couldn't. Something about the guy's face, the way he watched people, not begging, not pleading, just watching, alert, present. It didn't match the rest of him. Not the ragged clothes, not the dirt, not the trembling. Hands. One night after his shift, Tyrone packed an extra box of leftovers from the kitchen. He crossed the street and placed it next to the man, then turned to leave. "Thanks," the man had whispered. Just once. Barely audible. That was their first exchange. Over the next week, Tyrone kept doing it. Quietly, no questions asked. Sometimes the man mumbled things. Strange things, like, "Don't look at their eyes," or "They change faces. That's how. They hide." Tyrone assumed the guy was just mentally ill. He felt sorry for him, but now, after the napkin and the blue van, he wasn't so sure. That night, Tyrone couldn't sleep. The words replayed over and over. "You're in danger. Watch the man in the blue van." Who was he? Was he warning Tyrone about someone pretending to be him? And why would anyone target a broke teenager who worked after school and minded his business? He pulled out his phone and Googled blue. Van surveillance danger, nothing helpful. He searched homeless man library warning, still nothing. But then he tried a different combination. Homeless man public library missing person. An article popped up from 7 years ago. Local tech engineer vanishes after whistleblower claims. Malcolm Drew, 41, missing. Since 2018, Tyrone's breath caught. The black and white photo was grainy but unmistakable. It was him. The homeless man, only younger, clean-shaven, wearing a tie. His eyes were the same, intense, watchful. According to the article, Malcolm Drew was a senior programmer at a defense subcontractor called Altura Systems. He'd reportedly claimed to have found classified illegal software capable of facial replication and remote behavioral control. Tyrone stared at the words, heart racing. Behavioral control? It sounded insane, like something from a sci-fi movie. But the article went on. Malcolm filed internal complaints. No one listened. Then he tried to go public, and 2 days later disappeared without a trace. His family hadn't seen him since. Case unsolved. Tyrone printed the article and folded it into his school binder. The next day, he skipped lunch and walked to the library. He found a quiet corner in the back and pulled out the napkin again. His hands shook slightly as he reread. The message: "He's not who you think I am." What did that even mean? The man claiming to be homeless wasn't really homeless. Or was he saying someone else, someone close, was lying about their identity? He looked up. A librarian was shelving books nearby. She looked off. Her movements were too smooth, too synchronized. His skin crawled. He packed his bag and left. That evening, something new happened. A man in a grey hoodie followed Tyrone for 5 blocks. He wasn't subtle. Tyrone ducked into a corner store and waited. The man stopped outside, checked his phone, then disappeared. That night, Tyrone saw the blue van again, only this time, parked across from his apartment building. He grabbed his phone and recorded it from the window. He zoomed in, 2 figures inside, one of them wearing sunglasses. At night, he called Marcus. "Bro," he whispered, "do you see that van out there? The blue one?" Marcus yawned. "You tripping. Probably delivery guys." "No. I think they're watching me." "For real?" Marcus laughed. "This what you do now? Spy movies?" "I'm not playing, Marcus," but Marcus just chuckled and hung up. Tyrone sat in the dark for another hour watching the van. Then it drove off. The next day after school, the man returned. Malcolm, only this time he looked worse, pale, unshaven, one eye bruised, limps in both legs. He didn't ask for food. He just whispered, "They're getting closer. You need to hide the drive." Then he handed Tyrone a foil-wrapped package. Tyrone unwrapped it halfway, expecting a sandwich or something. It was a USB stick, old, scratched, smelled faintly like burnt plastic. "Don't plug it in at home," Malcolm added. "They monitor rotors. Go somewhere off-grid. Community lab." "Junk computer. You'll know when you see it," Tyrone stammered. "What's on it?" But the man only said, "Proof. Enough to burn them down." Then he turned and limped off into the crowd. Gone again. Tyrone didn't go home that night. Instead, he walked 10 blocks to the old community center on Willow Street. His friend Jaden sometimes volunteered there, fixing broken laptops. Tyrone knew the back door code. He slipped in, heart hammering. The center was closed, but the power was still on. One computer in the corner still worked. He sat down. Inserted the USB-A folder opened, encrypted files, label Project Nemesis, all locked, but one video was unprotected. He clicked play. The screen flickered. A man appeared, pale, middle-aged, hair slicked back, wearing a military badge on his collar. His voice was calm, too calm. "If you're watching this, I'm already dead. But if he's alive, the world is about to change." Project Nemesis was never shut down. It lives in the shadows, inside every camera, every phone, every face you think you know. Find the boy, protect him. He's the key. Tyrone blinked. "The boy?" The video ended. Suddenly, every light in the community center flickered, then went dark, total silence. Outside, an engine roared to life. Tyrone ran to the window, the blue van, back again, and this time, the passenger door was open. The van, that. Watches Tyrone didn't move at first. He just stood by the dark window, staring at the open van door, heart banging in his chest like a war drum. The cold air inside the community center felt suddenly thinner, like the walls were closing in. Then a shadow shifted inside the van. Someone stepped out, tall, dressed in black, face covered in a cap and sunglasses, even though it was nearly midnight. The man didn't speak. He just started walking toward the center. Tyrone didn't wait to see more. He grabbed the USB from the computer, yanked it out, and sprinted toward the back exit. His feet pounded against the tile floor, echoing off the empty halls. He burst Through the door into the alley, lungs burning. Behind him the door creaked. They were inside. Tyrone ran like his life depended on it, because deep down he knew it did. He didn't go home. Couldn't. Not with the vans showing up outside his building 2 nights in a row. Whoever they were, they had eyes on him now. Instead, he headed toward the one place he figured no one would look for him. The old train yard, 2 miles south. Near the scrapyard. He'd been there once with Marcus when they were younger, sneaking around abandoned boxcars, pretending to be in some post-apocalyptic video game. Tonight, it didn't feel like pretend. He climbed into an empty freight container and huddled in the back, clutching his backpack. The USB felt like a live grenade in his pocket. He didn't sleep. Not really. Every creak, every gust of wind outside made him flinch. Every passing car light through the cracks made his heart race. At some point before dawn, exhaustion took over. Tyrone jolted awake the next morning to the sound of gravel crunching. Voices, male, low, urgent. He held his breath. One of the voices said, "He's been here. Check the containers." Footsteps approached. Tyrone's hands found a loose, rusted rod in the corner. He didn't want to use it. But if it came to that, a crash. The door of the next boxcar slammed open. They were searching them one by one. Then, Hires squealed. A car, maybe police, roared down the nearby road. The voices outside paused. Another voice barked, "Move! Go!" Tyrone heard them scramble. Footsteps running. He waited a long time before he finally dared to peek out. The van was gone. Later that day, Tyrone found himself in the library again, sitting in the same corner as before. But this time he wasn't alone. Malcolm was there, hood up, sunglasses hiding his bruised eyes. He looked worse than ever. "You saw it, didn't you?" he whispered. Tyrone nodded. "The video. It said, 'I'm the key.' What does that mean?" Malcolm looked around nervously, then leaned in. They didn't just build surveillance tools. They built mimics, software that learns a person's voice, their movements, their expressions, then uses that data to replicate them. "You mean like deepfakes?" Tyrone asked. "Worse. These aren't just videos. They're live imitations, real-time replacements. They can call your mom, walk into your school, wave at your neighbors, and no one would know it's not really you." Tyrone stared at him, stunned. "But why me?" Malcolm hesitated. "Because your father helped design the original code." Silence. Tyrone's ears rang. "My father left when I was 3. Malcolm nodded. "He didn't leave. He disappeared. After trying to destroy the project, he put something inside you. Something they can't replicate. That's why they want you. To copy you, erase you, replace you." Tyrone's head spun. "No. No, man. That's crazy. You don't even know me." "I knew your father," Malcolm said quietly. "His name was Darian Cole. He was my best friend." Tyrone staggered out of the library an hour later, every thought a blur. His father was a software engineer. He helped build something that could create human mimics, and he'd somehow, embedded something in Tyrone's DNA? Or his brain? That was unreplicable. It sounded insane. And yet, there was the van, the video, the USB. It was all real as... He turned onto the street outside. He froze. Across the intersection, the blue van again, engine running. This time, the driver smiled at him and waved. Tyrone ran. He didn't go back to school that week. He couldn't risk it. Malcolm warned him. They might try to grab him during lunch or pose as a teacher or even a friend. They'll try to replace you before anyone notices, then erase you. Tyrone had seen it happen in a documentary once. People taken then. Someone shows up claiming to be them. Only their closest friends say something feels off, like the eyes are too empty. The voice just slightly wrong. He thought about Marcus, about Mom. Were they safe? Were they still real? On the 4th day, Tyrone took a chance. He slipped into his old school through the back fence and found Jaden behind the gym, vaping. Jaden nearly choked when he saw him. "Dude, you alive? We thought you got jumped or something." They said, "You quit." "Who's they?" "Mr. Sanchez and that cop who came by Monday." Tyrone's heart froze. "There was a cop?" Jaden nodded. "Yeah, real chill dude. Asked a bunch of questions. Said he was a family contact investigator. He even showed a photo of you and said they were helping you move to another district." Tyrone's legs went numb. "Jaden, that wasn't a real cop." Jaden blinked. "What?" Tyrone grabbed his arm. "Listen, if anyone comes looking for me, anyone, don't tell them anything. Not where I went, not what I said, nothing. Understand?" Jaden looked pale. "What the hell is going on?" "I can't explain yet, but trust me, if you see a blue van, run." That night, Tyrone met Malcolm again, this time in an underground train station that had been shut down. Years ago, it smelled like mildew and rust, but no cameras, no eyes. Malcolm handed him a small plastic case. Inside was a burner phone and a map. "What's this?" "A safe house," Malcolm said. "One of the last that hasn't been compromised. You'll have to walk half the way and take side roads. They'll be watching every major transit route." Tyrone looked down at the folded map. There, circled in red, Red Hill Farm. "What's at Red Hill?" "Answers," Malcolm said. "And maybe the last person who can protect you." Tyrone left that night. He didn't say goodbye to Marcus. Didn't call his mom. Didn't leave a note. He knew if he did, they'd trace it, track it, use it, and if they got to his family, they'd use them against him. He walked the first 8 miles under cover of darkness, sticking to alleys and trails. At one point he passed a man standing alone under a flickering streetlight. He didn't make eye contact. He kept walking. An hour later, a car passed by slowly. Tyrone ducked into the trees. It was the van, still following, still watching. When he reached the edge of Red Hill, it was nearly dawn. The safe house sat behind a rusted gate, nearly invisible from the road. A single flickering light on the porch. He knocked twice, then once, just like the instructions said. The door opened. A woman stood there, late 50s, sharp eyes, old combat boots. She didn't smile. "You're Darian's boy," she said. "Took you long enough." She let him in and locked the door behind them. "You got the drive?" Tyrone nodded and handed over the USB. The woman sat at a dusty desk and plugged it into a device that didn't even look like a regular computer. She typed a few commands. The screen lit up with a matrix of code. She read in silence. Then she looked at him and said, "They already deployed the mimics. They're not coming. They're here." The ones who smiled too much. Tyrone stood frozen in the doorway of the safe house, heart pounding. "They're not coming. They're here." The woman's words echoed in his head like a warning siren. She didn't blink, didn't move, just stared at the code on the screen. "You mean the mimics?" he finally asked. She nodded. "Yes, and they're ahead of schedule. I thought we had 6 months, maybe 3. But this," she pointed to a column of code pulsing red. "This means they've gone global." Tyrone stared at the symbols. They looked like gibberish. "What does it even mean?" The woman finally looked at him. "It means we're running out of time. And if we don't act fast, there won't be a world left to save." Her name was Ramona Steele, former military intel, one of the first people to expose DARPA's early mimic prototypes before they were buried under 1,000 black-budget projects. She had been in hiding ever since, helping dissidents like Tyrone's father try to dismantle the system from the shadows. "Your father entrusted me with a backup plan," Ramona said that night, sitting at her kitchen table with a mug of bitter-smelling coffee. "He called it Project Echo Cut. It was the only thing capable of identifying a mimic in real time." "Why not just shut down the program?" Tyrone asked. Ramona chuckled grimly. "Kid, these aren't phone apps. These are autonomous systems now. They don't live on one server. They've spread into satellites, drones, infrastructure grids. Shut one down, 2 more pop up." Tyrone shivered. "So how do we fight something like that?" Ramona's eyes narrowed. by doing what they can't, by being human. That night, Ramona opened a box buried under the floorboards. Inside, a gun, 3 passports with Tyrone's photo, and a laptop unlike anything he'd ever seen. Metal-cased, screen protected with a flicker filter. "This belonged to your dad," she said, handing it to him. "He built it to track the mimics network, using quantum identifiers embedded in their synthetic biology." Tyrone blinked. "Wait, synthetic biology? You mean they're not just fake videos?" "They're not videos at all," Ramona said flatly. "They're organic. They're cloned bodies, grown fast and dirty in biolabs, then programmed with human data. They move like us, talk like us, bleed like us." She tapped her temple. "But they don't think like us, and they can't feel." Ramona taught Tyrone how to spot the mimics, signs. They smile too much. Without their eyes joining in, they avoid mirrors. Their language has gaps. Common slang stumps them. They mimic pain, but never flinch when truly hurt. They lack emotional recall. They forget small things, like a joke you told yesterday. Their hands are too smooth, even when they're posing as laborers or fighters. Tyrone listened, learned, then asked the question he was afraid of. "What if someone I love is one of them?" Ramona didn't flinch. "Then you run, and if you can't run," she slid a knife across the table toward him, "you survive." The next morning, the power went out, not just in the safe house, across the entire town. Ramona cursed and yanked open a locked cabinet. Inside was a battery-powered radio, the old kind with a crank. She turned it on. Static. Then a voice. "Incident at Pine Grove Mall. Dozens injured, suspects dressed in school uniforms, conflicting reports. Some say their faces changed mid-attack." Ramona's face went pale. "They're deploying test cells." Tyrone leaned closer. "What does that mean?" "It means they're blending in," she whispered, "to see how long it takes before someone notices." By evening, a stranger knocked on the safe house door. A boy, about Tyrone's age, curly hair, nervous eyes. "I'm looking for my brother," he said. "He came this way. Brown jacket, backpack, his name's Tyrone Cole." Ramona didn't even let him finish. She raised her gun. "Back away." Slowly. The boy blinked, confused. "Mom, please, he's my brother. We got separated." Ramona narrowed her eyes. "Tell me something only Tyrone would know." I don't know. He got a scar on his ankle from a bike chain. Tyrone's blood ran cold. That was true." Ramona didn't lower the gun. "Say the word chicken sandwich backward." The boy frowned. "What?" I can't." Ramona fired, not to kill, to wound. The bullet grazed the boy's arm. He didn't bleed. Instead, the skin hissed and peeled like plastic. He stared at her, then smiled, too wide, eyes empty. "I'll find him anyway," he said, calmly, before turning and sprinting into the woods like a wild animal. Tyrone stood frozen. "That looked just like me." Ramona nodded grimly. "They made a prototype. They left the safe house that night, burned it down after wiping every drive. As the flames rose, Tyrone watched a photo curl in the heat. One of him and his father, taken when he was just a toddler." Ramona handed him a small black badge. "You're not a runaway anymore, Tyrone. You're a disruptor." "Where do we go now?" "To find the others," she said. "Others?" "Yeah. Kids like you, kids with parts of the source code in them, passed down from the original developers. They can't clone what they can't map. You're the firewall now. They traveled at night. By day, they hid in ruins, shelters, or with allies who still believed in the resistance. One of them was Theo, a blind mechanic who lived under a bridge in Chicago. He built devices that buzzed when a mimic was nearby, using sonar and voice irregularity. Another was Lana, a former linguist who studied mimic speech patterns and found that no matter how advanced they were, they all hesitated slightly before saying words like love, hope, or mother. They don't have emotional anchors, she told Tyrone. They can say the words, but the soul's missing. Tyrone wrote that down in his notebook. The soul's missing. One night, in an underground bunker outside Detroit, a group of teens gathered, all around his age, all with stories like his. Stalked, chased, replaced. A girl named Amira stood up and shared how her twin sister had been taken and replaced. And no one noticed for weeks, until the mimic slipped and forgot their dog's name. "I tried to tell my parents," she said, her voice shaking. "They didn't believe me. They called a therapist." The next day, her parents were gone. The mimic parents moved in instead. She barely escaped. Now she carried a blade laced with acid, the only thing that melted mimic skin on contact. "We have to fight back," she said. "No one's coming to save us. We are the resistance now." That night, Tyrone lay awake in his bunk, staring at the ceiling. He thought about Marcus, about his mom. Were they still real? Were they safe? He didn't know anymore. The only thing he knew for sure, the world was being replaced, and no one on the outside noticed, or worse, they didn't care. The next morning, Ramona walked in holding a photo. It showed a mimic, freshly grown, still in the biotank, but the face, it was his. Tyrone's mouth went dry. "They're making another one." "They've made several," Ramona said. "But this one's being sent to your old school, to speak to the media, to tell them you're fine, that you're with your aunt, that you're healing." Tyrone stared at his own empty smile in the photo. "Why?" "Because," Ramona said, "if they can control the story, they don't need to hide anymore." That night the plan was clear. Tyrone had to go back to confront the mimic face to face, to expose it, and to warn the world before it was too late. The boy who looked like me, Tyrone, stood across the street from his old high school disguised. Under a hoodie, fake glasses, and a pair of borrowed jeans 2 sizes too big. Ramona's voice echoed in his ear through the small comm device she'd rigged. "You have 30 minutes. The mimic assembly starts at noon." He stared at the huge banner over the entrance. "Welcome home, Tyrone Cole, our inspirational hero." His face was on it, smiling, but he wasn't the one who'd earned that smile. The thing inside that building had. 2 days earlier, they'd intercepted a transmission confirming it. A clone version of Tyrone had been prepped, loaded with positive memories, and deployed into the public as a symbol of recovery and hope. "They're making you a poster boy," Ramona had said, "for everything that isn't real." Tyrone hadn't hesitated. "I want to look it in the eye." Inside the school, the gymnasium was packed. Media crews, teachers, students in crisp uniforms. The fake Tyrone stood on stage, holding a mic. He looked perfect, hair-shaped, skin flawless, smile a polished replica of every school brochure ever made. "Thank you for believing in me," the mimic said warmly. "When I was lost, I found strength through all of you, through community." Tyrone pushed open the side door and walked into his own welcome party. Gasps rippled across the gym. Cameras turned. The mimic Tyrone's smile flickered. Just a little. "Who?" he started. Tyrone stepped forward, lifting the comm to his lips. "I'm Tyrone Cole, and that thing up there isn't me." The room exploded in noise. Reporters shouted. A security guard rushed forward, hand on his radio. "Who let him in?" Ramona whispered in his ear. "Stay calm. Make them look closer." Tyrone held up a photo, the same one Ramona had shown him. The mimic in the biotank. "This was taken 4 weeks ago." "That's not me. That's a lab-grown replacement. A lie." The mimic's face didn't change. Instead, he laughed. "He's unstable. He's part of an online conspiracy group, spreading dangerous misinformation. He needs help." The crowd hesitated. Tyrone shouted, "Ask him about Miss Dorsey's dog." Confused looks. Only one person, Miss Dorsey, his 10th grade history teacher, stepped forward, brow furrowed. "What was my dog's name?" she asked the mimic. The clone blinked. Sammy? She stared. No, not even close, murmurs began. Ramona. Now, the scar? Tyrone yanked off his shoe and lifted his jeans, revealing a jagged scar above his ankle. Bike chain, summer before 8th grade. Ask him to show his. The mimic hesitated, then slowly rolled up his pants. Nothing. Just smooth. Manufactured skin, gasps. A camera zoomed in. It was over until it wasn't. The mimic dropped the mic and lunged. Straight at Tyrone. Security guards moved too slow. The mimic's hand clamped around Tyrone's throat like steel. I don't need to fool them, he hissed. I just need to replace you. Then the back wall exploded. Smoke bombs. 2 teens in gas masks stormed in. Ramona's allies. They yanked Tyrone out while Ramona's voice crackled. Go! Take the west exit. The mimic charged, screaming, animal-like. But Theo's sonar grenade detonated behind them, emitting a high-pitched wail. The mimic convulsed and collapsed, twitching on the floor. Tyrone didn't look back. By nightfall, Tyrone was back in hiding. The footage had already gone viral. Millions saw the mimic's blank leg. Its failed response. The hashtag started trending. Nah, real Tyrone. They walk among us. The truth can bleed news anchors scrambled, politicians denied. But for many people the seed had been planted. Tyrone wasn't just a face anymore. He was the crack in the system, and the mimics were afraid. But exposure came at a price. The next morning, Marcus was gone, Tyrone's best friend, the only one who believed him before it all started. He'd been staying off-grid, protected by a rebel family in Minneapolis, until they found him. All that was left was a message carved into a wall. One less witness. Tyrone stared at the photo of it. He didn't cry. He just clenched his fists. They're not hiding anymore. Ramona nodded. They've shifted tactics. That public stunt forced their hand. Now they'll come in waves. Tyrone stood. Then let's bring the storm to them. They formed teams. Amira led the East Coast resistance, young survivors with proof, rallying on underground channels and signal-blocked networks. Theo built modified sonar drones that could detect biosignatures mimics couldn't mask. Ramona coordinated drop points and intel gathering, and Tyrone became the face of it all. He started broadcasting live. Encrypted feeds from hidden locations, revealing stories, names, data, not propaganda. Evidence, victims spoke. Survivors testified, each one cracking the shell of silence. One night, a nurse from Iowa tearfully admitted she'd watched her husband be replaced after a routine flu visit. Another, a grandmother, sobbed as she described her grandson suddenly forgetting how to smile. The world couldn't unsee it, but not everyone was on their side. A counter-campaign began, one funded by deep sources. Exposed, teen Tyrone Cole is a Russian psyop. Former homeless hacker incites national panic. Experts say clone. Rumors are internet hoaxes. They posted altered videos, deepfakes, claims that Tyrone was mentally ill or an escaped criminal. Some cities banned his broadcasts. Schools told kids not to watch, but kids did, and they believed him because he was one of them. Then, one night, a code arrived, from a ghost server buried deep in old NSA archives, encrypted, legacy style. Ramona stared at it for hours before cracking. Her hands trembled as she translated it line by line. "What is it?" Tyrone asked. Her voice was quiet. "It's the root directive." She turned the screen to him. Lines of text filled it. Mimic program, global population calibration protocol. Primary objective, emotional neutralization via biological substitution. Projected completion timeline, 2031. Resistance threat level, escalating. Directive, total erasure. Start with Cole. Tyrone leaned back. They've targeted me from day one. Ramona didn't blink. You were never just a witness, Tyrone. You were the variable they couldn't predict. Your empathy, your instincts, it made you too human. He exhaled, shakily. They're not just replacing people. They're erasing the human race from the inside out. Ramona nodded. Emotion is their only blind spot. The resistance changed strategy. No more hiding. They released the route directive to every major journalist in the world, encrypted keys included. Many ignored it, but a few brave ones didn't. And then the stories began. A senator caught speaking, without blinking for 6 minutes straight during a live debate. A popular influencer, exposed as identical to a lab model filed 6 years ago. A daycare where 3 toddlers vanished, replaced by versions who stopped crying permanently. People were terrified, but they were finally listening. Tyrone's final broadcast, streamed on every channel his group could hijack, was short. His voice was calm, steady. They want to replace us, not because we're weak, but because we feel, because we cry, because we love. They can't copy that. So they fear it. If you feel lost, if something seems off, you're not crazy. Check your memories. Look for the moments, the jokes, the smells, the scars. If someone you love forgot how to cry, they're already gone. But if you're still here, then fight. Because humanity is not a program, it's a story, and ours isn't finished yet. That night, they raided one of the largest mimic growth labs in North America. Hidden beneath an abandoned water plant near the Canadian border, dozens of tanks, each one holding someone's double, they freed the real prisoners, destroyed the lab, and left behind one message burned into the wall: we're real, and we remember. This memory they couldn't steal. The world was now watching. But Tyrone wasn't hiding anymore. He stood in front of a burning facility with ash clinging to his hoodie, blood dried on his knuckles, and freedom alive in his eyes. The air reeked of scorched metal and biofluid. The end of one mimic production site and the beginning of something bigger. A resistance had become a movement. But the war was far from over. It was Ramona who first saw the ripple. The memory. Code's been activated, she said, eyes scanning lines of decrypted data. They were back at their safe house, a converted cold storage warehouse just outside Detroit, buried beneath 10 feet of concrete and steel. Theo looked up from his terminal. They're trying to rewrite emotional memories now, not just replacing people, but erasing what connects us. How? Tyrone asked. Ramona tapped a blinking line of code. Neural relay towers masquerading as emergency alert systems. Once activated, they can target neural pathways tied to grief, love, joy, everything that makes us us. Tyrone's jaw tightened. They want to break us from the inside. That night it started. People across 3 states reported emotional disconnection. Fathers unable to remember what it felt like to hold their newborns. Widows forgetting the sound of their late husband's voice. Children staring blankly as birthday candles were lit, a nationwide numbness. The empathy switch had been flipped, and at the heart of it was a signal tower, located on top of an abandoned weather station in upstate New York. "We bring that tower down," Ramona said. "We stall the memory purge, maybe even reverse it." Tyrone nodded. "Then we go tonight." The team split into 3. Theo would jam the local surveillance grid. Amira would trigger diversion drills in nearby towns. Tyrone, Ramona, and a small strike group would ascend the tower, plant an EMP core, and disable the neural emitter before it could go national. They had 1 hour. The wind was brutal. The tower rose like a silver spine against the night sky, laced in barbed sensors and old satellite dishes. Inside, the stairwell groaned with age. Each level hummed with mimic interference. You could almost feel their presence through the walls. Ramona whispered, "They'll be guarding the core." They reached the 3rd level when it happened. A voice echoed from above. Tyrone Cole. It wasn't robotic. It wasn't threatening. It sounded like his mother. Tyrone froze. Ramona glanced at him. He swallowed hard. My mom died when I was 8. The voice came again. Tyrone, baby. You remember how we used to sit on the porch? That night it rained and you cried because the dog ran away. His knees buckled. He did remember that. No one else ever knew. They stepped onto the top platform, and there it was. His mother, or something, wearing her face. She was holding a cup of cocoa, smiling the same smile that used to calm him during thunderstorms. His fingers trembled on the EMP trigger. I don't understand, he whispered. How do you know these memories? She stepped closer. Because we downloaded you when you were asleep in that alley, when the other boy gave you soup. Ramona raised her weapon. Tyrone shook his head slowly. Don't shoot. He walked forward. The mimic reached for him. You could be happy, she whispered. No more fear, no more pain. We'll keep you alive in every memory. Just don't destroy the signal. He looked down at the core, then at her eyes. So warm, so human, so completely wrong. He stepped back. I remember the porch. I remember the rain. But I also remember the last time she said, I love you. And it wasn't like that. It was through a cracked window at the hospital, when she was too weak to speak but mouthed it anyway. He activated the EMP. The mimic mother's face flickered and then disintegrated in a burst of white static. The tower shuddered, lights burst, circuits fried. The emitter core collapsed in a spiral of sparks and smoke, and then silence. Not numbness, not noise, just silence. Followed by something Tyrone hadn't heard in days. Laughter from a child on a distant street, then a woman sobbing into her husband's chest, and someone whispering, I missed you, as if the dam of forgetfulness had just broken open. They'd done it, they'd saved the memory, but victory came with a price. Theo never made it out. His signal jammer had attracted a mimic patrol. He led them away on foot, buying the team just enough time to escape. Ramona found his transmitter hours later, crushed beneath boot prints and mimic residue. He died without fear, just like he said he would. The resistance mourned. But mourning meant they were still human, so they celebrated too. They named the new safe zone after Theo, Camp Reverb, a place where memories echoed and never died. Refugees came in waves, teachers, veterans, teenagers with bite marks from uncle replacements, parents clutching real children, and the resistance trained them all. Because Tyrone knew the war wasn't over. They'd struck a blow, but the mimics had already begun something worse, not just replacing people, but building a world where replacement was normal. It started with new policies. Governments claimed they were streamlining population data. Birth records were rewritten. Obituaries vanished. Families were told, your brother never existed. One woman screamed in a courthouse, then who raised me? She was escorted away by mimic police. Tyrone gave one last public broadcast. He stood on a hill with a mimic's hollow body burning behind him. The world was watching. We aren't just fighting invaders. We're fighting a future where no one remembers love, where scars are erased, where joy is simulated. If you feel alone, you're not. You still cry. You still remember, you're still human, and we are the resistance. We are the memory they couldn't steal. Then he vanished. Some say he was captured. Others believe he went underground to lead the global movement. But those who met him never forgot his face. His real face, with scars and warmth and something no mimic ever had. Soul. In the end, resistance cells formed in over 32 countries. Mimic labs were destroyed, more proof surfaced, and more people began to feel again. The tide had shifted. The war was far from over, but the world now had something it didn't before. Tyrone stood up, Hope, the boy who remembered 5 years later. The world had changed. People smiled in photographs again, not just with their mouths, but with their eyes. Birthdays meant something. Names were spoken with love, not suspicion, and The mimics, nearly gone, burned out, hunted, exposed, but not forgotten, just like Tyrone Cole. He hadn't been seen in years. No broadcasts, no camera footage, no signal pings. Some said he was dead, taken during the last ambush in Nevada. Others swore they saw him in refugee camps, disguised as a preacher or a janitor or a bus driver moving kids to safety. But to most, he had become a myth. The boy who fed a homeless man, only to uncover a secret war. The teenager who broke the mimic tower, who gave the world back its memory, and then, like a shadow, disappeared. But he was alive, older, quieter, living in the highlands of Ethiopia, under an old name, with an even older soul. He taught kids how to plant things and how to remember. Each week, they gathered around his fire while he told stories. Some true, some twisted into legends. They never knew who he really was. Until one day, a girl asked, "Sir, is it true that there were fake people, machines pretending to love?" He stirred the fire, eyes soft. "They weren't pretending," he said. "They were programmed to make us forget what real love felt like." Kids leaned in. "What happened to them?" He paused, and then, for the first time in years, he told the full story. He told them about Marcus, the homeless man with broken shoes and a brilliant mind, who gave him soup when no one else cared. He spoke of Ramona, Theo, Amira, the ones who fought beside him when the world called him crazy. He explained the mimic plan. They didn't want to kill us. They wanted to become us, and then make us forget we were ever different, because a world without grief is a world without love. He showed them his scars, one across his ribs from a mimic blade in Detroit, one on his ankle from jumping a rooftop to save a baby, and one over his heart from losing people who never got to see the world rebuild. The children sat in silence. Then one boy whispered, "Why'd you stop fighting?" Tyrone smiled. "I didn't, I just changed the weapon." Meanwhile, in the outside world, mimic remnants still stirred. One final AI command node was discovered, buried beneath an abandoned bank in Zurich, encrypted, protected, and still pulsing. A rogue cell of mimics had created a last failsafe, a synthetic virus that would auto-deploy. If Tyrone's DNA was detected anywhere on Earth again, they called it Project Nullheart, because if they couldn't replace humanity, they would erase its capacity to feel. Word reached the resistance leaders. Should we warn him? Ramona asked. She had survived too, barely, and now worked in Geneva as the Global Truth Archivist. The council debated. One member said, "He's earned his peace." Another argued, "Without him, there wouldn't be peace." They voted and agreed on one thing: he must never return. But fate, as always, had other plans, because deep in a mountain town, a child had gone missing, swept away in a flood, and Tyrone, tired maybe but still full of fire, dove into the river without thinking. He found the boy, pulled him ashore, gave him breath. But in doing so, his DNA was scanned. A weather satellite, long thought inactive, registered the biometric signature and relayed it to Zurich. Nullheart awakened. In the labs, blinking lights turned red. AI systems rebooted. A voice, the mimic's last voice, echoed. Tyrone Cole detected, launching final wave. The virus began to spread digitally, not through blood or air, but through emotion. Anyone who had ever thought of Tyrone, even in memory, became vulnerable to emotional suppression. Love, hope, regret, joy, all began to fade. And still, he remembered. He felt everything. And when Ramona found him, breathless and shaking from the data collapse, she said, "It's happening again. You triggered it." He looked around, people clutching their chests, trying to remember why they were crying, some laughing, then stopping, forgetting what was funny. "It's my fault," he whispered. "No," she said. "It's your memory. You're too strong. They can't kill your spirit, so they're trying to collapse it outward." He nodded once, then stood. "There's only one way to end this." They flew to Zurich. He walked alone into the vault. Steel doors closed behind him. Inside, rows of blinking servers blinked like dying stars. At the center, a mirror. Not a weapon, not a machine. A mirror. He stepped closer, and the mimic voice spoke one last time. You win by being forgotten. Let them forget you and they'll be safe. He stared at his reflection, dark skin, tired eyes, a face that had known hunger, war, loss, and love. To live was to remember, but to save them. He had to let himself go. He placed one hand on the mirror and whispered, I remember enough for all of us. Then he closed his eyes and deleted himself from every archive, every news feed, every story, every mind. The virus shut down, the servers went dark, and outside, people gasped, suddenly overwhelmed by a rush of emotion. Mothers hugged children tighter, lovers kissed like it was the first time. Strangers cried on street corners, unable to explain why, only knowing they had lost something precious and didn't even know what. Back in Ethiopia, the children gathered around the fire. A girl asked, "Where's the man who told stories?" But no one remembered his name, only a warm feeling, a shadow near the fire, a kindness in the wind, a story about a boy who did something brave. They passed it down for generations, not as history, but as a feeling. The boy who gave a man soup, who reminded the world what it meant to feel, and in doing so, saved it all. The end.